Hi everybody, welcome to our 2-point perspective lesson. What you're going to need for this lesson is a sheet of paper. You're going to need a ruler and an eraser. So to begin, the first thing we're going to need to do is to make our 2 points, hence 2-point perspective. We're going to need to start and make one on the far left, just making a little dot here. And then on the far right, we're also going to need to make another dot, like this. Then we're going to take our ruler and really lightly, all of our lines need to be drawn really lightly. We can darken them later on. But we're going to start where our first building is going to be, and we want to try to make it completely horizontal. I'm going to rotate the drawing a little bit so it looks better on camera. So we're going to draw our first building, and we're just going to make a nice vertical line. And that's going to end up being the building that's right on the corner that you're going to see. Now it's a little closer to this side, but that's not a problem. It just depends on where you're viewing it from. So we're going to have our first building is going to be right there. And what I want to do to begin with is create the bottom of the building and the sidewalk. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to line it up to this vanishing point on the left and to the bottom of the building so that they connect. Take my ruler and draw a line to connect them. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to go from the very bottom of the building and I'm going to connect over to my other vanishing point to create the other half of the bottom of the building and the top of the sidewalk. So now we need to create the sidewalk, which will be in front of all these buildings. So I'm going to take my ruler and what I'm going to do is make sure that this top is still connected to the vanishing point here, and take my ruler and try to hold it in place, but just pull it down a little bit like this. So we have to make sure that this top one is still touching the point, and down here it's a little lower. And I draw my line and I stop right when I get to that bottom point, creating the sidewalk. And then I want to connect right with that point where I left off and go right back up to this vanishing point, and that's going to be the start of the sidewalk. Now we have to do each block for each piece of sidewalk, and it's actually easier than you think. It's also really easy to goof up. So what I'd like you to do is take your ruler and have it connect with the vanishing point over here on the right, and this is how we're going to do the blocks. So your ruler has to touch the vanishing point here, and then over on this side we're going to make a little line, and then we're going to rotate it down. Make sure that this is still touching the vanishing point. We're going to pull it down and make another block here. Keep in mind that when you're drawing these blocks, we just want it to spin on this point right here, spin on this axis, and I'm going to keep drawing them, and we want to space them apart a little bit more every time. To make it look more realistic, we have to space them apart more and more each time. We're almost there. So we rotate it a little more, rotate it a little bit more. Good, we're right at the edge of our building. So there's our sidewalk blocks on this side. And over here, we're going to go over to this point. Now we're going to connect to the point over here and bring our ruler back up to the top, draw our line, pull the ruler down a little bit. Try to keep your hand locked over on this side when you pull the ruler down. That way it won't go out of position from being lined up with your vanishing point. Pull down a little more. Keep in mind you can stop this video at any point. If I'm going too fast for you, stop it, rewind it, play it again. I want to pull all the way down here and make one nice big block at the bottom. There we go. Now we have our sidewalk done. That's our sidewalk that surrounds our building. Now we can make it 3D a little bit more if we want to. If you want to take it a little bit further, you can take your ruler and line it up with that edge right here and pull down, and this can create the curb. So we have a little line here, and then we can take that and connect it back to the vanishing point on either side to create that look of a curb. Now it starts to look 3D when we add that edge on there as well. There. Now the sidewalk starts to pop out a little bit more, looks a little bit more realistic. So next we're going to define our building a little bit more. So what I'm going to do really lightly is go from the top of my building to the vanishing point, and I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to draw a line on the other side. And part of this we're going to end up erasing because our building is not that massive. It doesn't take up the whole block. So we start with this, but we're actually going to end up erasing part of it. So what I'm going to do is decide how big the building is by taking my ruler again vertically, and I'm going to draw another line to divide off that far end of the building here. So that's going to be one wall of the building, and I'm going to move my ruler over here, maybe make this one a little shorter. They don't have to be even, but there's the wall of the building over there. So now what we need to do is erase this and this. We don't need these ones anymore. So I'll take my eraser and erase, and I didn't draw it too hard. I didn't press too hard, so it disappears pretty well. We're going to erase that, get rid of that part. Now we can't just have one building, we have to add some more buildings on this block. So what we're going to do next is start to add in more buildings. So over here, we're going to create another building on this side. We're going to give it a little bit of space, kind of like an alleyway in between. And I'm going to make my building a little lower, like that. I'm going to make a building right there that's going to be kind of the same point as this of the building. And I'm going to connect with my left vanishing point right to the top and draw that line down. Don't draw it too dark because we're going to erase part of it. Now the top of the building here is going to connect over to the vanishing point at the other side. So I'm going to draw that one and connect it over to here. But this line at this point is kind of unnecessary. But that one's going to end up being erased. So we're going to erase this part. But this piece is very important here. We're going to put other buildings over in this place in a second. We have to create another wall for this building on the left side. So I'm going to draw another vertical line here. And that's going to define where that other building is going to be. But we don't need this anymore, so we're going to erase this line right up until the edge of the building. We're going to take a look and see how it looks now. Good. Now it looks like we have building 1, building 2. Now over on this side, I'm going to make one that's a little taller. So I'm going to pop this one up a little higher than that, than what we have. Okay, that's going to be our building on the right. That one's going to be a little taller, a little different. We're going to go from the top of the building to this vanishing point. It's pretty steep, but we can do it. Straight down here. And then we're going to take the top of the building and go way over to this vanishing point over here. Nice and lightly. Next, what we have to do is define the two sides of the building. So we're going to make a vertical line here. There's one, so we have that side of the building, and then erase this. We don't need that anymore. There's one side of the building. Maybe we want this other side to be here, so we're going to stop there. Now we stop right at this point because we don't want to draw that line right through that side of the building. We want it to overlap properly, so we stop right when we get to that line, and then the extra we can erase here and get rid of all of our extra, our guidelines. Okay, those are gone. So now we have 3 nice tall buildings. Let's make another one over on this side. Maybe we make another taller one over here. So on the far left, draw a line up. That makes another tall building on this side. And then we repeat. We need to connect to both of our vanishing points. So we go here to here. And then at this vanishing point, we connect over to that one. I accidentally erased a little bit of the vanishing point, so I'm going to put it in a little stronger on this side. It was disappearing a little bit. So our next building, we need to define the walls. So I'm going to make a vertical line for wall number 1. And maybe it's going to disappear back in here and we wouldn't see it at all, so we're going to erase this line. And we're going to erase this line. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do a 5th building. So we can get 5 of them in. I'd like everyone to try to do 5. So we're going to define our last building, and we're going to go a vertical line here. We're going to connect to this vanishing point right there, and over here, this vanishing point. So we get that top of the building, and then there. So I already know, even though I drew that line, I'm not going to need it, but I did it just for demonstration point. I'm not going to need it. So we're going to need another sidewall for this building over here that kind of hides. We're going to make our line. There's the end of that building. Erase. Okay, that's looking pretty good now. Now it's really starting to look like buildings on the edge of a block. I erased part of this line. Let's draw that back in again. Now I think it's time that we can do our horizon line, which is where the sky meets the ground. So I'm going to take my ruler between those points and I'm going to start to define where the ground is going to be. That looks pretty good. It's going to be our background area. Let's see, we have our buildings. Now it's time to add in some of the fun stuff. Now that we have our buildings done, we can add in things like signs and windows. Let's start to do some of that. So let's start with the door. Right in this building, we're going to have our main entrance right here. And I'm going to go from the two areas on the blocks of the sidewalk, and I'm going to make my vertical lines come up from there. Okay, I'm going to do two vertical lines, and I know they're probably not going to be right. I'm going to have to erase part of it in a minute. But what we'll have to do is, once again, connect to our vanishing point. Let's go to this side here. We're going to have the same thing we did before, where we line it up here with our vanishing point, and we're just going to take the ruler and slide it up and make sure we're still connected to our dot here. There's our line. So everything we do on this side of the building is going to connect to this vanishing point here. So next thing I'm going to do is do a line here, and I'm going to do another line over on the other side, and we need to define some windows. So we're going to connect to our vanishing point, draw a line across. We're going to do a giant window. Let's connect that one a little further down. Now we're going to connect those for a giant window right here. There, now we got a little extra. We can erase that. Let's do a line right up in the center to divide it. And let's do a couple in the middle. We'll go from the vanishing point again and divide these off. There we go. Rotate it up, slide it up. As long as it's still connected with our vanishing point, we're good. That. Now we're starting to get some windows on the front of our building, and you can even start adding in a little bit of writing too. If we want to put like a word over top of it right here, you can add a name for the building. If you like, you can do some fancy writing. If you want to make a little sign, you can do a little sign too. Let's put a sign on one of the buildings over here on this side. Let's start with our vanishing point, and we're going to make couple little lines coming off of our vanishing point on this side, and this is going to end up being a sign on the side of the building. Okay, so we make sure we're always connecting to our vanishing point, and within here I'm going to draw some letters, and I'm going to make sure they go from top to bottom. Okay, so they touch the top and bottoms of the line, so they look like they fit. So we're going to do M, do R, dot, Mr. A, apostrophe S. So we have Mr. A's over here. Maybe we do double doors, so I'm going to do a vertical line here, and then maybe there's two handles to enter the building right here. So maybe this is my building here. Let's put some windows on the top. So we're going to connect to this point and draw some lines connecting to our vanishing point. Make sure they always connect to that vanishing point on this side. If we're drawing on this side of the building, we need to connect to the vanishing point on that same side of the building. There, it starts to define that a little bit. That looks pretty good. So what I'd like you to do is go through and define some windows and put some names on the buildings. And then part of the fun part is you can go in and do some shading. You can shade in the alleyways. So if I want to go in and add some shading here and blend it, we can. I'm going to start off by heavy pressure here on the side, and I'm darkening it in, and I can lighten it up once I get to the edge, because it would be really, really dark in the alleyway and it would get lighter once we get towards the edge, like that. And we can do the same thing here. It's going to get darker at the edge and get lighter as we go in on the inside. And we can start to darken in our buildings a little bit. I know I told you to draw them pretty lightly before, but now we can start to darken all those things in a little bit too. So in all of the areas that are kind of hidden by light, or alleyways, so to speak, we're going to go in and do some shading. In here, everywhere in here, we can start to add in the shading, because there should be a shadow since it's covered by light. It's covered up. So there you go. There's your start for 2-point perspective.